It's so good to finally sync up and meet you virtually.
I know, same. I'm sorry how long it took.
No, it's fine. My schedule is wonky, so I totally understand. I want to start with like our mutual connection, which is Dan Fritz,
Mm.
and I love him. He is one of our camera operators on The Chosen, and is the sweetest person in the world. But I originally, so I was aware of Pin 15, and I hadn't watched it yet. But then I saw he was wearing like either a patch or a T-shirt or something that said it, and I was like, oh, you know what? I need to watch that show, like to support Dan. And I went and watched it over like a few days that I had off, and I was on location, so I had nothing else to do, and I just locked myself in the hotel room and watched every episode and fell in love with it.
Thank you for watching it. That's
And
so, yeah.
of course, it's incredible, and especially as someone who, even at 35, feels still like an awkward middle schooler
Mhm.
most of the time. It was I felt very
And
seen.
it's the
So
show for you. Yeah, that's definitely part of the conceit of it is never, yeah, never feeling like we quite escaped it.
yeah,
And
but
and the argument that most people don't and that we kind of pretend that we have because
yeah,
that's growing up and you just pretend better.
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
versus at that age, you're kind of like, it's so obvious that you're pretending, and then
Yeah,
just become a little bit I mean, you hopefully there's growth and but there's
sure.
still some pretending. The pretending never leaves, I don't think.
Do you, well, I just you saying that kind of made me have this realization. But like, I did a film recently where I played a high school teacher, and it was all actual like high school kids that I'm working with, and I was really excited going in, and it was such a great experience. But in hindsight, looking back, I realized how self-conscious I felt the entire time I was around them, because I was, and I'm, because we're shooting in a school and I'm surrounded by teenagers that I'm like desperately trying to impress and be cool. And like, did y'all ever feel that while shooting the
Yes,
show? Okay.
100%. I mean, I'd be lying if there weren't times where, like, Maya and I are doing work or trying to rewrite a, scene before we're shooting, and that the kids are, like, on their cell phones, like, texting each other, and that it's like I could pretend to be a doll and be like, "I don't care what they're saying about me," but of course.
Yeah.
And, there were also it was like the perfect we were like, "Oh, well, how did you play 13 and da, da, da." It was you're surrounded by 13-year-olds being perfectly 13,
Yeah.
and it just whether so on screen and off screen, I would feel sometimes like I was osmosis becoming
Yeah. Well,
he's cute, right?
yeah. Well, it's, I sometimes, my daughter, I have three kids, and our girls are 9 and 6, and our son,
We
yes, it's chaos.
bless you.
But they're 9, 6, and our son is about to turn 5 in like a few weeks. And even at that age, there's already kind of like the sassiness and like the trying to be cool and like talking about like who has a crush on who.
Mm.
And our girls, I'll pick them up from school and just listen to them like talk in the back seat about their days. And it's so like nostalgic and kind of it's interesting being kind of a fly on the wall
Shoot,
as an
you just
adult. It reminds me a little bit of Bo Burnham's Eighth Grade, and how
Mm.
there's I saw an interview where he talked about while he was writing, he would just go to YouTube and type in like how to survive freshman year, and then he'd go to like the filters and click on videos that had been uploaded within the last like day, and he'd find a video that has like 3 views, and some
Mm.
sweet little eighth grader had just done this video, and they're trying to like give advice on how to survive high school, and they haven't even gone to high school yet. And it's like I went and tried the same thing, and it is the most like beautiful, like
Mm.
pure, heartbreaking thing you'll ever see. And it's I feel like you would really
I'm gonna do that.
enjoy some of those videos. Yeah, because it's really really sweet. And they're just they want to be seen and they want to be liked, and it's like this thing that never really goes away. So
Mhm.
um
It's interesting unpacking that time and trying to, like, continue to distill why we weren't doing 5th grade, and why we weren't even doing 6th grade, and why we weren't doing 8th grade or high school. It was like, why this year, and what is important about middle school in general, but, like, 13. And it felt like it was such an unfair, funny, tragic moment of going from childhood and without any tools, all of a sudden you're aware that being full child is not acceptable.
Yeah.
And you're having these new feelings neurologically, physically that you have to keep up with, but you have no idea how to do it properly.
Yeah.
And versus when you start to get in the know a little bit and you know how to pretend a little bit better, you know what this thing means, everything is new. And the posturing in response to everything being new kind of juxtaposed to the really raw truth of the new experiences.
Yeah.
I was like, it's Shakespearean, it's
Yeah.
operatic, anyway. So, but I really have such reverence for, and I always really have for kids and tweens and teens, because I think just naturally what they're going through, especially these days, which that it includes the internet,
Yeah.
that they're like superheroes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I just find they're sort of underestimated. I just think it's like it's their first time in the world doing these things. Like we're adults and we can look back, but they're new, and I don't know. It just looks hard.
Yeah. The most I had a Zanga, and I did AIM. And
What's a
like,
Zynga?
it was like before MySpace even. It was like a social media, early social media. But it's like there was never like online bullying or anything like that back then. It was like it's such a different beast now being that age, and it's really.
What year was Zynga? Like what year are you thinking?
Let's say
Because AIM was big for me in
AIM was
fifth
big for me
grade.
too. What was your username? Do you,
My first username was, I think it was Banana8214.
okay.
And then as I got older, so that was probably fourth grade. And then in fifth grade, I think I realized that that was like kind of young
Yeah, it's so childish.
and lame.
Yeah.
It's yellow, it's a fruit. Like, what am I, a kindergartner here? And then I did the random algorithm because that was on, if I remember,
Yeah.
that was on AOL. And I think that remained my like sign in on AOL. I unfortunately have a really photographic memory for these years. And then AIM, I think, came after like the messaging service, and then you could find a new screen name on AIM, and
Yeah.
that was a random algorithm. So there's a scene in Penn where we're looking for stuff, and I think I get like diaper 911 or something like that, and that's based on this. I got star 4-way C.
Okay.
I naively was like, cool, I like celestial things, which is one embarrassing. I was like in theater, so it seemed like I was being like, I'm the star. And 4-way, when I started to get older, was something that people thought I was
Sure.
sexually advanced.
Yeah.
Yeah. What
Mine
about
was
you?
it was a bit of an oxymoron. It was Babe Magnet 2890 was
Oh,
my
that's
AIM.
great. Babe
Yeah.
magnet.
Yeah, because that's what I was trying to put out
I
into the
love
world,
it.
even though it couldn't have been further from the truth.
When was your first girlfriend?
I mean, there were like, I don't know what would count as like the official first girlfriend, because there
Right,
was,
right, right.
the ones where you'd sit next to them at lunch or
Oh,
whatever. But
that counts, I think. That's
I
the
think
funniest
so.
one.
Yeah, though
Yeah.
maybe like sixth grade or something. But like
Okay.
the
That's pretty
first
early.
real girlfriend where it's like, we'd hang out and go on dates or whatever, was probably like I was probably 15 or something like
Yeah.
that, maybe 16. So, yeah, it was, and I was typically the one that was, because I always felt safer around girls because they didn't beat me up, and it
Mm,
was, once I did become friends with the guys. So in high school, I got picked on brutally,
mm.
and then I befriended the football team. So then they had my back, but then picked on me in their own, that kind of like in a
In
big
their own
brother
way.
way.
Mm. But still
And
painful, obviously.
yeah. And like they would make fun of disability stuff. And
Mhm.
I remember once they had me and this other kid named Trevor, who was really sweet. He was real scrawny and really small too. We were both tiny. And
Mm.
we were like the small guys in this group that were kind of like the token goofy kids in the foot, but like we're the ones
Were
that
you
would make them
funny?
laugh. Yeah, I learned to
Yeah,
like be funny and
I learned the same.
deflect.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was for a while it was really self-deprecating, and I still can, like, I find humor now, and like there are funny parts of my disability, and like
Mhm.
there are things like that that I can joke about, but it's not mean spirited anymore. Um,
Mm.
but at the time, it definitely was. But I remember they made me and Trevor fight each other because we were both the small, like weird kids, and there was like this moment where we're looking at each other like, I don't want to do this, and like they're in a circle around us, and it was like such a weird time. So I became friends with all of their girlfriends, and then it was like this weird thing where they would come to me for advice about, the guys that I was also friends with, and like it was, yeah, I was friends with all of the girls, so it kind of took a while
Fascinating.
before I found, before I was able to get romantically involved myself. But
That's
um
so much work to have to protect yourself, can I just say? Like, I mean, not to be overlooked, the hoops that
yeah,
you're relaying to just have a safe ex
yeah,
who was the first group of guys, if you had to, like, name the group
yeah.
that was giving you a hard time? Were they, like, popular guys?
Sort of. So, okay, so this is actually I have
I
this
wanna
written
beat those
down.
guys. I mean, it just
I
the
know.
rage that comes out in me when I
Let's
hear
do
this
it.
kind of stuff.
I'm actually working on a podcast episode where I interview them. So well, I'll send it to you whenever I do it. But
Good for
I
you, that's amazing.
it's going to be interesting. This is a perfect segue because it kind of correlates with pin 15. I was going to ask you, and I'll tell you this, and then I'd love to
Yeah,
hear your answer. But
yeah.
if there were like cathartic moments where, or moments where you felt especially vulnerable, since so much of it was drawing from your real life
Mhm,
experiences,
mhm.
where it ended up being kind of healing. Because for me, on The Chosen, my character, it was the first time they've ever incorporated my disability in anything I've done. And there's a scene where I'm like specifically addressing my disability, and it was such a healing experience where I was able to kind of see myself for the first time since like childhood in a positive light. And I then started doing all this work and going back to like try to trace the moment that I started to view myself as less than, or view my specifically my disability as something to be ashamed of. And it was ninth grade. Prior to that, I only went to private schools where I knew all the kids since I was like a baby. So no one thought
Mm.
any less of me. I was just Jordan. Um, and then in ninth grade was my first public school, and a big one in Arlington at Lamar High School. And um, I the first like month, I remember bouncing around from like group to group at lunch, trying to like fit. I'd wear like a fat farm and stuff like that, and go sit with like the guys that had like the tall tees and baggy pants, and I wouldn't really fit in there. So then I'd go to the skaters and the goth
Mm.
kids, and just couldn't
Mhm.
find my clique. But I was like, oh, theater, because I had done like 40 professional productions.
Oh, wow.
I had started acting at 6, so I was like, that's where I'm going to find my
Yeah,
people.
those are
And
my
but they were so like shitty, the theater kids there, and like really
pity
kind of
to you. You're
yeah,
like, "They were
yeah,
so
no, they're the
untalented."
worst. No, they were talented, but they were like just real snotty and like kind of clicky. And I was like this new kid that they, and there was also the favoritism from the teachers that cast the same, kids as the lead role and everything. And I remember I got like the first play I auditioned, I was ensemble, and I just felt very isolated and overlooked, and like not like that wasn't going to be my group either. After that, I just started eating lunch by myself, and then one day these kids, and I'll just say his first name is Matt. Him and some friends, they were all football players as well. Uh, so I ended up befriending all of their friends, which was a weird dynamic later on. But they were definitely popular. And
And they came to sit with you.
so they invited me over. One
They
of them,
invited you.
yeah, he saw me like sitting in the hallway eating my sandwich, and he was like, "Hey, come sit with us." So I was like, "Oh, cool." And I went and sat with them. And at the time, at 14, I had already been going to LA for the last like the previous summer. I spent the whole summer out there pursuing acting, and had booked like a small co-star on a Nickelodeon show. And but it was something that I'm like, "Oh, cool, I'll impress them with this." And they were asking what I do. I told them I act, and they were seeming really interested. So it's like, oh, sweet, I'm making friends. And then when I told him I was on this Nickelodeon show, he was like, "Oh, wow, I didn't know they let cripples on that show." And then immediately that was the moment that everything switched in me, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. This is something I have to hide. I need to like I'm ashamed of that I can't I have to pretend it's not there. So I remember I would get like my right leg is like this much shorter than my left.
Mm.
So I started taping like decks of cards together and putting them in my shoe to try to even my legs, but it hurt really bad by the end of the day and like things like that where it was just I would and even to this day, I'll see my reflection in a mirror when I walk by or on camera, which of course I pick the most like the career where I'm watching myself more than any other career.
Totally.
Um,
Exposure therapy.
yeah, exactly. And
Mhm.
it's like I find myself like wincing whenever I see it sometimes.
Mhm.
But so that was the first time. But then I did EMDR therapy just like a couple months ago and relived those moments. And
What is EMDR therapy? I thought I knew
oh my God,
I'm obsessed with therapy.
do
So,
this, do EMDR. It's
is it
so
trauma therapy?
sort of, yeah. It's like
Okay,
when
I think I dabbled.
you dabbled in it. Yeah. I've done so many different kinds too. It's
Penny it down.
you hold these little like sensors these that vibrate and they go back and forth. It's rhythmic. And you close your eyes, you first the first session they'll kind of help you and it can be visual too, like with a ball going back and forth or like something vibrating. But they then help you create like a safe place to kind of clear your mind. It could be a field, whatever you want. And then once you've kind of perfected that, then you go into traumatic memories. And I went into that. That was the first one. And I've had a weird relationship with crying, so I never really would cry in therapy. It wasn't for lack of like not of wanting to. It was just there's a wall for me sometimes. And in
It's so
this session,
interesting because you're clearly so emotionally in touch.
well, I
You
mean,
want to
yeah,
talk about feelings and like that's
yeah.
such an interesting thing. Yeah.
So, and this is something it's another good segue for another question, but
Mhm.
I ended up doing this and I relived the memory. I've talked about it so much. I was fine. And then in the session, the therapist basically is just like, okay, now what are you noticing? So then it starts to veer off from like what really happened. And I get up from this group of kids and I start walking into the sea of students and it's literally moving like water, like the students are. And I found myself like drowning in all these bodies. And I ended up spotting, so I would eat lunch between these vending machines after I started getting bullied to kind of hide myself. So I swam to these vending machines and I squeezed between them. And then she was like, okay, now I want you to picture the people in your life now who love you coming into the school and searching for you. And then I lost it. And I was like,
I'm gonna cry.
yeah, I was just sobbing the rest of it. And they all found me. I turned into grown up Jordan.
Wow.
And then I walked back to my 14-year-old self and hugged him and introduced him to our kids and our wife and our friends. And like, I hugged the
Mhm.
bullies and it was such a
Wow.
healing thing. So the whole purpose of EMDR is to like reframe a traumatic memory where the trauma is still there, it still
Mm.
happened, but
Mm.
then there's a positive association with it,
Mhm.
and also an acknowledgement that like you got through it, you've overcome it, like it's a positive thing. So, um,
Wow. Amazing.
did
Thank you
you?
for sharing that.
Of course.
Yeah.
I'm curious for you though, if you ever what were there any storylines like as you're writing that you felt especially like nervous about to like kind of reveal a
Mhm.
certain part of yourself or like tap into? And then after doing it, were there any like moments where you're like, oh wow, that was really healing to kind of relive that experience?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, so many. I actually have a when I first did therapy after college, she walked me, she was amazing, Natalie. She walked me through a similar thing of like, of space as a child that caused me, pain and fear. And my parents fought a lot, which brings us into Pen 15. Like
Yeah.
that was a part of it. And I was scared. Yeah, there's an episode that's like the Wiccan episode, and we kind of become witches. And,
Yeah.
it was almost, it was so autobiographical, that episode, especially for me, except, and the episode starts with watching, Are You Afraid of the Dark? Do you remember that
Yes, I love it. Yeah.
show? And just trying to have a friend over and watch TV and paint your nails. And then from the other side of the, you hear through the four walls arguing, you turn up the volume. So hopefully they don't hear that your household is a different household than theirs,
Yeah.
And I certainly had that a lot in my life. And what was amazing is in the episode, I got to write my friend, eventually Maya, hearing the arguing, but saving me from it and pulling me into the woods and playing a game of pretend. And we sort of become, we start to believe that we're witches in the episode. It's really ridiculous and absurd and funny because we take it extremely seriously. And I have a memory of doing that with my friend when I was a kid. We were like, discovered some letter in a mailbox that said our names, and we were like, that's Mother Witch, and we must be her disciples, and let's change the world. Like, let's do this. So in the episode, we're like, I'm gonna fix my parents, and they're gonna love each other, And so, and then in the episode, there's also a lot about like, and I actually, for whatever reason, stumbled on something online of people kind of deciphering what the meaning was at the end of the scene. But there's a scene where Anna, me, is like, the spell hasn't worked and my parents are still fighting. It seems like it worked. They start getting along better and then they're fighting even worse again. And I meet Maya by a fire in the middle of the night and I'm like doing a spell to disappear. And I think as I got older, I started to realize that there was, what did my therapist call it? Suicidal ideation.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't something that I was planning, or it never seemed real to me, but there was this constant feeling of wanting to be gone and not be there in the moments that were too hard. And a lot of their fighting and a lot of the aftermath of their fighting was loud and it never got physical, but they were like throwing things and I was afraid, and that was from being little. And when things happen in repetition, it really can imprint on you in a way that I didn't really realize. And I would never have named it these things as I got older. I was just like, oh, that's, my parents fought a lot and I didn't want to be home and I ran to my best friend's house a lot, and and then they divorced and split the house up. Well, they were waiting for the judge's answer on who would get the house for about 2.5 years. We split the house in half, which was also bizarre. But
what was that dynamic like? Like splitting the house in half? Was there literally like a line of tape through the house?
In my mind, I picture it as a line of tape, but no, it was like my mom and I had our bedrooms upstairs, and then there was downstairs next to the kitchen was a little TV room. And behind that TV room was a guest room. And there was a little teal bathroom that was in the middle attached to it that nobody used because it smelled like our dog's mouth. and that became my dad's bathroom. And it was sort of this like addition area that was his. And then I traversed I'd watch TV with him, kind of avoid my mom. In the beginning, it began with good intention, I think, where it was like, we're still a family, but there's going to be less fighting because we're just existing separately, sort of, but like, we'll still have dinner together. We'll still have, and then eventually it turned into like, no, we're both using the faucet for different dinners.
Mm-hmm.
It became more kind of extreme as it went on. And, or like, I have this memory of my dad, they're like waiting for the judge to kind of come back with a verdict, and it's getting closer and closer of who's going to get the house. He never went on vacation when I was a kid. And during this, we went camping and we would visit my grandparents' retirement community in Florida, and I'd sleep in their green room, like house room, like so hot. And then all of a sudden my dad was like, we're going on a cruise. And me and him went on a cruise. And I remember saying goodbye to my mom in our house, going like, I guess we're going to the Bahamas. Bye, Mom. Like, just it was just a topsy-turvy time. And I have a dark sense of humor. I think a lot of it is entertaining, whether that came from self-preservation and learning to tell the stories in a funny way, or I really think they're funny, but I really do think they're funny. And I think they're tragic too.
Yeah.
I've been writing a book about it for a long time. So that's also been kind of exposure therapy,
I
you know?
bet. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so interesting because my parents, they divorced when I was like 2 or 3.
Okay.
So I was a little younger. I don't really remember them not being together, but there was definitely a lot of fighting, and my
Mhm.
dad's very authoritarian,
Mhm.
very like he's Marine cop lawyer, and now he's the mayor of Arlington, Texas. Like very everything he does, he's like the boss. And
Wow.
then my mom is the most like the sweetest, most passive, permissive person. So easy to take
Mhm.
advantage of. No rules, no structure in our house. We didn't own a key to our house. I would go to my dad sometimes. He didn't get us that often. If I didn't want to go, my dad would guilt and I'd feel
Mhm.
make me feel really bad because I was so sensitive. So my
Mhm.
mom instilled in me like this belief that I can control how other people are feeling around me by just like give people what they want, like be a
Ah,
people
I see.
pleaser.
Yeah. Yep,
Um,
yep, yep.
and I developed through that a lot of codependent traits that I've had to kind of deconstruct as an adult.
So,
And
mhm.
so I was about to ask if you had a similar thing as a child of divorce, like these kind of feelings where like you are in some way responsible or have the ability to kind of fix, either parent or the relationship or whatever. Like, what was kind
Totally.
of your feeling through all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I I have an older brother. He's my half brother. We have the same mom and he's 11 years older.
Okay.
And I lived in Vermont when I was much younger. Jamie lived in Vermont too. And then by the time I want to say I was 4, he decided to live at his dad's house, who also lived in Vermont. And then by the time I was 7, we moved to Massachusetts and he went to college. And so it was a lot of like feeling like I was lying when I told people I had a brother.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was like, well, I'm kind of raised like an only child, but I do have a brother. And it was always this thing that truly up until recently I've kind of grappled with going like, there's this person that I respect so much and look up to, and like I don't know him that well.
Hmm.
And um so that was sort of one thing. And then a lot of, the harder moments were with my mom. So my parents would fight and then my dad would usually leave and then it would be me and my mom. And there was this sense of being the third adult in my life that I realized as I got older. And I think at the time I think part of it is my instinct to like, I always talk to the adults more and I always like, I had that sort of it kept me a bit of an outcast in school, certainly in elementary school. Being like, you shouldn't swear or,
Yeah.
or like,
Did you try really hard to make all of your friends' parents like you? Was that
yeah,
like really important? Me too. That was
yes.
so
And
important
it
to
was
me.
also because they provided outlets for me. Like going to my friends' homes was very important for me. And I
Hmm.
would sort of want to disappear into their family and forget that I was the guest, you
Yeah.
know? And I always wanted siblings and I always and there was just more traditional parent-kid dynamics. And so, I think at the end of the day, there was a lot of mediating between my parents from a young age and like hearing my dad's saga and hearing my mom's saga, what they thought of each other, and me going like, well, dad doesn't think, you're misunderstanding him or whatever, or yelling like, shut up from upstairs, and being like, I'm trying
Yeah.
to sleep, you know. So really, yeah, just not boundaries and not really grew up quickly because of that,
Yeah.
didn't have that preserved innocence that I've grieved as an adult, I think. And the irony is that then I made a show about being 13 again that I did.
Yeah.
I sometimes I'm like, it's the most expensive therapy you've ever done is that I get to go
Right.
back and relive and in a sense how you started this EMDR.
Yeah.
almost a live action
Yeah.
EMDR where some therapist was like, here's $14 million, go rewrite
Yeah.
it to in a healing way. And I really feel like we got to do that. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's
Mhm.
so cool. And I mean, honestly, it was therapy for a lot of other people too, like myself included. So thank you for that. And I, I I wanted to shift gears too a little bit. Oh, actually, before I want to mention this, there was a one friend. I can't even remember his name, but he was like a friend of a friend, and I stayed the night at his house once with another. It was like three of us having a sleepover, and we spent hours like playing video games and talking to his mom, who was really nice. And it seemed like
Your
she
mom was,
really liked us and was
oh,
like friendly. And the
poor
next day
thought.
at school, he was like, "Dude, my mom hated you." And I was like, "What? Like, what did I do?" Because I was never like, it was the same thing. I would not, especially like, I'd never cuss in front of a parent. I was like
He
very
was probably
respectful.
making it up to mess with you,
Probably
right?
to this
Yeah.
day, I still like that'll pop in my mind, and I'm like, why did she hate me?
We gotta call him up because I bet what happened is that his mom in the morning was like, "I love him, and you should take some notes from him." And no, I'm not kidding. This is the
I
kind of
hope that's
shit
what it was. Yeah,
I like to think of myself as a expert on this age in psychology.
honestly,
Um, and he probably was like so jealous and in turn came to school
that's a
and told
good point.
that she hated you.
Okay, that see, you just helped reframe that traumatic moment. So we just did
I'm
some
almost
EMDR.
certain because that's insane. Isn't it interesting how there's little memories that will be recurring and pop in a way
Yeah,
where I'm like, and it's some that took me, I don't know, where you're just like, oh, why am I thinking that doesn't matter? That doesn't matter. And then finally I talk about it and
yeah,
crying, you know, it's
yeah.
weird.
Right.
Our brains are weird.
They're very weird. I wanted to ask though, we had been talking before a little bit about like dealing with different chronic illnesses and everything.
Mhm.
I had super, super bad asthma growing up and was probably from like 3 to 18, every year was hospitalized at least like 3 or 4 times. Um, and it
Wow.
got bad. Like I was in a coma for 2 weeks when I was 18.
What? Because of
Um,
asthma?
yeah, because I anytime at all that I would get a cold, it would go straight to my lungs and then turn into
Okay.
pneumonia, and I'd end up in like ICU, or whatever. Like I spent so much time in the hospital, so it's something. Now there's a weird comfort, like the few times I've had to
In
take my kids
hospital.
to the hospital for something, nothing
Mhm.
serious, but like
Mhm.
I'm like, oh, this is where Daddy went, and I'm like, I have to check myself. I'm like, oh, I'm way too excited right now. Like I need to. They're
Do you think
scared.
it makes you feel is there a feeling of safety when you go that you know the people there are gonna take care of you weirdly and do a
Yeah,
good or yeah.
I think so. And I think, yeah, it's just you feel that was another thing I realized in EMDR actually. There, I think there was a feeling of like being seen and getting the things I needed in those moments, like whenever I was in the hospital. Because then at home, there I was still very supported by my mom. Like as a actor, whatever it was I wanted to do, I was so supported, and she would.
Mhm.
Her whole life was she never dated. It was just like dedicated to me and my sister and my brother, and I'm so grateful for that. But like, there was also this level of like I think not feeling fully seen or fully allowed to like feel whatever I'm feeling. And in the hospital, I could be scared or I could be in pain or whatever. So
I used
yeah,
to have that feeling too of like my own stress or my own emotional needs or my own, there wasn't space for that or my family couldn't handle the additional stress or something. And I
yeah,
remember I had appendicitis in 3rd grade and I went to the hospital and I think I told my parents like you can go. Like I remember staying there overnight by myself and being like this is nice.
yeah,
It was quiet and people were attentive and I could be in pain and not feel any stress about the idea of that,
yeah.
you know?
Like you're not
But
a
that's
burden or adding to anything else.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. That is a lot of time in the hospital. I'm really sorry that you went through that. Do you still deal with asthma to that extent now, or did it start to kind of heal a bit?
A little. So I was 20, what was it, 2, I think, the last time, so like 13 years ago. was the last time I was hospitalized with it. And since then, I got on a preventative inhaler. I take it every morning and every night, and it keeps me out of the hospital. It makes it to, before my rescue inhaler, I would use every day at least 10 times. It was constant. And it, because of that, my heart started to like beat way too
Wow.
fast and like all
Yeah.
sorts of other complications. But what has your journey been like working through any chronic illnesses or like things that you've from childhood to now, like what has that whole
Yeah.
journey been like?
It's been interesting. I mean, I was just out of college. I was living in New York City. I was waiting tables, and things that kind of had always been there started to just like get more exaggerated, and where like I always had, in retrospect now, I'm like, oh, I always had joint pain. I always, like, from being a kid, or weird things like my hands were always really, really dry, my lips and hands from early on. I remember like going on a date and making my dad in high school like stop at CVS because I was like, I need Aquaphor now. Like it's like so bad. Um, so there are sort of those little things that were always there. I'd also have something where like I'd sort of, every time I stood up when I was a kid, I'd kind of have to like lean on the wall because I'd see stars or kind of like black out a little bit. But I didn't know that everybody didn't feel like that.
Yeah,
You
you
know,
like
you just
you know
don't
that
do it
feeling where
new.
you're gonna pass out every time you stand up?
Yeah,
Like,
and I didn't even associate it with passing out because that only happened a couple times. So I was just like, "Oh," and I would tell my mom, who's a nurse, and she'd be like, "Oh, the blood's rushing from," like, it was just not of concern, you know what I
yeah.
mean? And it's tricky with chronic health stuff because I don't know. It's such a journey to try and getting diagnosed and feeling like a hypochondriac, and
Well,
you can
especially as a
help,
woman too. Like,
especially as a woman, and
yeah,
then it can help, it can feed hypochondria as well because then you're attentive to every little thing, and when you don't have answers, then it can be anything. Then it's the monster in the corner of the room. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Then you're on Google forever. So for me, like, diagnoses have been like very, very important. I try to not let them rule my life, or um but knowing what something is and where certain symptoms is coming from is really helpful for me. So anyway, waiting tables, I wasn't feeling well. I'd be very fatigued, but when you're on your feet all the time and doing like free theater and just like working your ass off,
Yeah.
you're not, you're not going to feel well. But then what started to happen? I started to get a lot of tingling in my hands and feet. My mouth was numb, my tongue was numb, my throat was numb, swallowing was feeling different. And so I tried to, I saw my primary doctor, and I just wasn't getting anywhere. And it probably took about 10 years of random, doctor appointments to see a neurologist who did just like a full blood panel and said, okay, you have an autoimmune disease, and referred me to a rheumatologist. And I found out I had Sjogren's syndrome, which for some people can be just like, I mean, it sucks no matter what, but dry eyes, dry mouth. But there's different kinds, and one of them is sort of more neurological. And so for me, I have a lot of nerve stuff. Um, yeah, joint pain, fatigue, the feeling of like the brain fog. When people were talking about long COVID, I felt so seen because I was like, oh, that's kind of like what it feels like.
Yeah.
And then along the way, other little, I shouldn't say little things, but like finally, like PCOS was diagnosed. I had like POTS was diagnosed. EDS, mast cell activation syndrome, which I'm still learning about. That's like, relatively new in the medical community. Um, and a slew of other things that I'm happy to have answers on. But when I look back to childhood of how much it like actually affected me,
Hmm.
and not feeling well and being the last in gym, doing mile run and,
Yeah.
mile run, quote unquote, I walked. Um, so yeah, it just had more of an impact on me than I really realized. You know what? Before this, I was also remembering, do you know what Alice in Wonderland syndrome is?
No.
So when I was a kid, I think I'm realizing now that this is probably very formative for me, but I didn't talk about it forever because it was like this weird thing. So when I was a kid, I would get fevers. And it turned out my dad had the same thing when he was little. And my dad had sort of a complex health history as a kid.
Okay.
But I would get this feeling that everything was spatially different. Sounds would speed up. I remember Sonic the Hedgehog, my dad playing the game and on Sega, and I was like, turn it off, it's a nightmare. It's like, like it was going really fast. My fingers would either feel really long and my
Whoa.
body would feel huge or really tiny, and my dresser would like be small or large. And apparently, it's like a kind of a rare thing, but it's also underreported because you sound insane. And children usually are the ones to experience it during fevers because of brain inflammation. And so every time I would get a fever, I would just cry because it was such a scary
Yeah.
experience. And that I think was probably like more formative than I realized. Like
Yeah.
I love Tim Burton stuff, and I think it's probably because feels like a part of childhood.
Yeah, right. I've never even heard of that. That's fascinating though. Do you still experience that? Like if you get a fever now, or was it just then?
I don't, thank God. I grew out of it, but there are little moments where that I've had a fever and felt like I can kind of feel it starting, and then I try not to think about it
Yeah,
because it's creepy.
it sounds like it.
Yeah, it's not a fun feeling.
Yeah, I'm sorry you've, kind of had to deal with all of that, but also I'm glad that you have gotten some answers because it's my sister-in-law, she since she's been since my wife and I have been together because we met 15 years ago, and that was kind of the beginning of her sister's journey with all these different chronic illnesses. POTS is one of them,
Mm.
and scleroderma is
Oh,
another,
wow. Yep.
and Crohn's disease, like all sorts of stuff. And there's been like every year or every few months, I feel like there's a new thing she's trying where she's like, really into different diets and different like lifestyles and all these different things to try to help with it. Having to go get like infusions and all this stuff. And it's exhausting just watching from afar. So I can only
Mm.
imagine, having to live that and go get all these tests done and everything. But I'm really glad that you're, getting the answers. Are there treatments for it that have been helpful, or like, are you still kind of on the quest to find those?
Yeah. I mean, there's some level of sort of in this moment, I feel relatively stable. There are good and bad days. There are times where I've been really sick and with muscle spasms and just really not able to have, a life because of it. And um I feel like, of course, there are times when I miss the feeling of, feeling 100% more often. Recently, though, I feel like there's more of an acceptance to operating at 80% on most days and that being okay.
Yeah.
And then who's to say like it's so complicated. It's like my daughter's 4. I don't get the kind of sleep that I, used to, it's complex.
Yeah.
And I struggle too because there's a really strong history of cancer in my family. My dad had cancer 3 times. He passed of it 5 years ago.
Oh,
And so as I was like talking about earlier, that line of kind of never letting my brain sit still with health and trying to control outcomes,
yeah.
eventual outcomes. It's like that's a careful dance for me. So now that I feel like relatively stable, I sort of accept that there's good and bad days. There's days that I need to, if I pushed myself too hard, that I often, it's not unusual for me to need a day in bed. And
Yeah.
then and it's scary in those moments of going like, is this my new life? Am I ever going to feel back to normal? And then kind of um I come back to myself again.
Yeah.
But the range of people's journeys are so intense and it can be so much more debilitating than what I have. Um, but it also makes it such a tricky thing to treat or, find relief from. I hate that your sister-in-law is going through that.
Yeah. I mean, she's definitely like she's gotten some answers, which is great. But yeah, it's a constant thing, and there's always new things popping up. But um, yeah, I mean, we all kind of get used to our circumstances. And yet yesterday, I actually just interviewed David Holmes, who was Daniel Radcliffe's stunt double for Harry Potter that became paralyzed, and
Wow.
um, it was such a enlightening conversation, like talking about how the disabled community is the only one that we're all kind of guaranteed to join at some point. And
Mm.
what, even if it's like short lived or whatever, it's like it's the only minority group that anyone can join at any point in their lives. All it takes is like
Mm.
one wrong step off of a curb or an illness or whatever.
Mhm.
And
Wow, that's profound.
yeah, and it's you know, finding, like I think you said, finding that acceptance and like, you know what, this may just kind of be most days for me is functioning at 75% or 80% or whatever, and that just makes the days where I am at 100 that much more special. And then the
Mhm.
other days it's like it'll pass and I'll get back
Yeah,
to 80% eventually. And if not, if 60% becomes the new normal, you'll get
right.
used to it eventually. And it's
And there
like,
have been times where the percentage is lower, and I'm really thankful
yeah,
80 right now. It's nice to be on that side of it
yeah.
versus, you know, I think there was a period, and I wonder how you feel about this, but of feeling, yeah, especially during the muscle spasm times, like, bad for myself.
Yeah.
I'm, like, jealous of my partner who was jumping out of bed and starting his day, and I was like, "Do I have to go to the hospital today? What's happening?" Um, and feeling isolated.
Mhm. Yeah. I've certainly been there. Like I think the biggest areas I felt bad for myself was being born with cerebral palsy and scoliosis. I always had pain. I always had things like that like for me, I think there's always on some level just kind of some sort of consistent pain in my hip or knee or back
Mm.
that I'm very used to now. Like it's I wouldn't know what to do if I wasn't in pain. Like
Mm.
I'm used to functioning um, at a high level when I'm in pain
In
because
a
that's
lot
all
of
I've ever done. And
yeah.
um,
As a child?
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So it's like I'm kind of like that doesn't bother me as much. But I think as an actor in general, we're already
Mm.
comparing ourselves so much to other people, and being told
Mhm.
by reps like or casting directors or whatever that different things about my disability. Like I was told by an old manager that like she was only sending me out for characters that were specifically disabled. Another one, I've had casting directors like ask me to tone the limp down. Things like that that are just kind of like, especially as a teenager, hearing that stuff,
Mm.
it was really hard to not kind of pity myself at times. And then the few times I did audition for a role that was specific, like they if there was a role that like they wanted someone with cerebral palsy, I'm like, oh cool, I have that, but mine is just a limp. And it's like, oh no, they want the forearm crutches or a wheelchair or whatever. So then I wasn't disabled enough. So it's like, okay,
Mm.
well then what am I, like where do you put me, like what box do you put me in?
Mm.
But that's still I'm still on that journey for sure. But I've definitely accepted my circumstances more and embraced them, and I lead with them. Like if I reach out to, I'm very proactive, and I'll
Mm.
reach out to a indie director. I'll see something of theirs and be like, oh, I love that, and I'll just reach out and say like, hey, I'd love to work with you on something if an opportunity ever comes up. And I usually lead with the fact that I have a limp and like address
Mm.
the elephant in the room, and
Mhm.
that's been kind of like I think helpful, one, because it answers other people's questions where they're not like, "Oh, what's wrong? Like, is that a liability? Like, what's going on there?"
Mm. Mm.
Um,
Is there on set, I'm just thinking of, like, 15-hour days,
yeah,
and, do you ever make stipulations where you're like,
it's no, I mean,
you don't mind me asking?
no, of course, I'm trying to learn to advocate more for myself. Like,
Yes.
the biggest issue at times on set is like asthma. There's especially the two shows I've worked the longest time on are period pieces where we're out in fields a lot. My asthma is triggered by
Wow.
allergies a lot. So it was 1883 and The Chosen.
Right.
And with both of those, there were like 1883, I had to go to the hospital twice. I find myself trying to cover it up at times because you never know how directors or
I was just
producers
gonna
are going to
ask you that.
react.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
No, it's interesting, but also as actors, we're like so many of us are people pleasers naturally.
yeah,
We're trained to want applause.
yeah,
We are intrinsic, we are the service, the product of our business, and we aren't doing our work if it's not in front of people literally approving
yeah,
of us, whether that's giving us the role or, and it's constant. So I think a lot of us end up here because there's a need to be told that we're good on some deep, deep level, whatever that, whether that's good in our soul or good in our
yes,
body or good in whatever. And then, but it is really contradictory to to so many actors like realizing that they need to take care of themselves and listen to themselves and advocate for themselves. And even like, it was totally me. They kept asking me, but I was on a set recently where I broke my ankle.
oh no,
And during, it was like a small stunt, and I'm really clumsy. And my foot got like stuck between this rock. And, I kept going. They were like, do you need to stop? They were amazing. And one, I'm like supposed to be crying in the scene. So I was like, let's do another take. Let's
yeah,
go.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like so masochistic, but also, I don't know. You're trained to be like when you're told to jump, say how high.
yeah. It's so hard to get rid of that. I just realized I've got to pick up my girls from school.
Oh my goodness.
But
Okay.
before we go,
Yes.
I would love to ask, or I give you a chance to promote anything you have coming up. And then my final question for all my
Mhm.
guests is what is the thing that you love most about yourself?
Oh, that's so amazing. Um, Promotion wise, there's a show called Side Quest that's out right now on Apple, and it's a spinoff of Mythic Quest. And it's an anthology series, and I do one with Derek Waters, who made Drunk History, and it
Oh,
was really
cool.
fun. We filmed it 2 years ago, and then the writer's strike happened. So out today. I think today, yesterday, it's out. Um, what I love about myself, what I love most about myself, is that the
Yes.
question?
It's always the hardest one.
Man, yeah. I am constantly working on this, and it will be my lifelong work, and to think otherwise would be insane. But I am proud of, you know, I don't know if it's I'm most proud, but I'm proud of myself as a mom and the relationship I have with my daughter. And that, when you grow up in like a house with a fair amount of trauma and you don't have great modeling in certain parts of parenting or um, how to cope with high stress situations, maybe without making them more stressful. My fear
Mhm.
was repeating my biggest fear in having a kid. Like when I was pregnant, I was so happy and I was terrified. And even when Essie, our daughter was first born, I remember like holding her, but going like, I wonder what her boundary is. Like trying to respect her boundary as like a newborn and like
Yeah.
just being in my head a lot about how to be a parent that respects her anonymity and just yeah, in my head about every move of what it means to be the kind of parent that I wanted to be able to emulate the parts that I didn't see modeled. Anyway,
Yeah.
convoluted. And I'm pleasantly surprised at my mothering at this moment in time.
Yeah.
And it's I can't say that. It means something deep to me. So,
Yeah. I
what
love
about you? You have to go, I'm sure, but I do.
No, it's okay. I'll go that same route and say the being a dad and like the same thing that like I at times, you know, would seek my dad's approval or my mom's because, it was very much I was very much raised in that mindset of like, oh, it's I'm responsible for the people around me's emotional states, and
Yeah.
there
So,
was a lot of anxiety with that. There's a lot of I was never really modeled. a way to like in a healthy way express anger or sadness or any of that. And there's been times where I've done a poor job, of course, but then
For all of us.
there's I think my ability to be able to look in the mirror and correct those mistakes and apologize always,
Mm,
and that my kids will never question whether or not I'm proud of them or love them. Like I, if I do everything else wrong, that's something I'll always make sure they know, um,
mm,
because yeah, that was something I think I believed that like my dad's love for me, for instance, was tied to whether or not I was making him proud or upsetting him
mhm.
or whatever. And
Relate to
it's
that.
like with my kids and my wife, like no matter what state we're in emotionally, it's like I'm always going to say I love you. I'm always going to like let you know I'm not leaving you. You like you are not being abandoned or any of that. So I'm just getting space for a minute or whatever it is. So
Mm,
yeah, I'd say that.
that's amazing.
Yeah, and I'm proud of you for doing that because it's not easy. It's really it's you know, like we're breaking these generational traumas and different things that like our parents learned from their parents and like
Exactly, and my
it's
parents did a better job than their parents did.
yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
mean?
And our
So,
kids
yeah.
will do better than we are. So, yeah,
Yep.
it's awesome. I'm so glad we did this and I let's please stay in
Mhm.
touch and
Yes, please.
yeah, I'm excited to chat with you again soon.
Same. Thank you so much. This is
Of
amazing
course.
what you're doing.
Thank you. You too. I'm so excited to read your book too whenever it's out.
Oh, thank you. All right.
Awesome.
Good luck picking up your girls.
Thank you. Talk to you
Okay.
later.
Okay. Bye.